Welcome to the service of the longest night. We gather here tonight as the days are growing shorter, the nights are growing longer. We gather here in the darkness and the cold to recognize that as this is happening in the world, many of us are experiencing a sense of internal darkness as well. It is this darkness that brings us here tonight, that calls us here. Perhaps you come here tonight because you are experiencing the darkness of missing a dear loved one. Perhaps you are experiencing health concerns or economic concerns that keep you from really feeling the joy that others seem to be feeling in the season around us. Perhaps you come here tonight because the pain of the world from the recent tragedies that we all know about in Newtown impact you so much that even though there was not the darkness before, you are feeling it now and you need a place to be. Perhaps that darkness is the deeper night of depression, but whatever it is, it can be hard to find a place for darkness in this season when so many are celebrating and looking only at the lights. Sometimes it feels like only the light is blessed and the darkness is cursed. Tonight, we do not seek grief, but neither do we shun it. Tonight, we remember that God welcomes and invites us into this world and into God's arms exactly as we are. Tonight, it is our hope to uncurse the darkness, to remind ourselves that the truest source of life and light in our world, God, was both the creator of light and darkness, and that God is present in both. One of my favorite poets, Rilke, said, "You, darkness, of whom I am born, I love you more than the flame that limits the world to the circle it illumines and excludes all the rest. The dark embraces everything, shapes and shadows, creatures and me, people, nations, just as they are. It lets me imagine a great presence stirring beside me. I believe in the night." Let us pray. Loving God, when we were little and we were afraid of the dark, someone would come and sit with us to help us be unafraid and know that we were loved. Tonight, we ask that you would be that presence, that loving warmth sitting next to us, letting us know that we are not alone, that we are cared for, that we are watched over, and that there is no reason to be frightened. Help us to feel your great presence stirring beside us, telling us that we are good just as we are. Give us your hand tonight, God, and walk with us in this night. Amen.
This first candle we light is to remember those whom we have loved and lost. We pause to remember their names, faces, voices, and memories that bind us to them in this season. This second candle we light is to redeem the pain of loss, the loss of relationships, the loss of jobs, the loss of health. We pause to gather up the pain of the past and we offer it to God, asking that from God's hands we may receive the gift of peace. This third candle we light is to remember ourselves this Christmas time. We pause and remember these weeks and months, the disbelief, the anger, the downtimes, the poignancy of reminiscing, the hugs and handshakes of family and friends, all those who stand with us. We give thanks for all the support we have known.
Let us remember
This fourth candle is lit to remember our faith and the gift of hope which the Christmas story offers to us. We remember that God, who shares our life, promises us a place and time of no more pain and suffering.
Let us remember the one who shows us the way, who brings the truth, and who offers us light in the night. That has been one of my favorite hymns since I think I had a favorite hymn. I love singing it every year. My father and I actually have even talked about making mix CDs with only that song and just people covering it. There's an amazing number of people who have done that. And yet it was only this year, as I was singing it as a lullaby to my son, that I noticed that someone is missing from that song. I wonder if you can think about who it would be. Yeah. It names everyone. It names the angels, Mary, the baby, of course, the shepherds, the wise men, even the lambs. But there's no mention of Joseph. where is Joseph? I noticed this was a theme, actually, that in the nativity set that I set out, I'm not sure that there's a Joseph. There's someone who looks sort of shepherd-ish that I have put in for a Joseph. In one of the Christmas stories that I was reading Jack, as it explains, Jack is my son, for those who don't know, that it explains each of the different parts of the people in the nativity, and again, there's no Joseph. So where is Joseph? Can we imagine Joseph in the stable? He's probably full of all of the same concern and normal anxiety that any new father feels about being able to protect and provide for his child. But this situation comes with a wrinkle. His child is the Son of God. How can a mortal man compete when this child's father is divine and heavenly? And when I think about this, when I think about Joseph wrestling with that, I think I find Joseph. I think I have found where he is. He's in the last verse of this hymn. Can you hear him? Can you hear him saying, "What can I give him, poor as I am?" He looks around the stable and thinks, if I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise one, I would do my part. But here I am, mortal, simple, carpenter Joseph. What can he offer? You know, I think Joseph is the most sympathetic of all of the members of the Holy Family to me, even more than Mary, who, for those of you who know me, I have an obvious connection to right now. I can't relate to being a virgin carrying a child, especially God's child. I can't relate to being God come in the flesh. But I can relate to that experience of being on the outside looking in. And don't we feel that the most acutely if we're not actually on the outside? If we're on the inside, but it still feels like we're on the outside looking in. That feeling of watching some great drama unfold, but not quite knowing my place in it, of not quite being sure why I'm there. Can't we all relate to that at some point in our life? And the truth is, too many of us feel this way at Christmas. We feel this way perhaps throughout our lives, but the feeling intensifies as so many things do around the holidays. Those without family around them, either without much family around them or without that one significant person. Those without the ability to buy lots of gifts, which is what we are told everywhere and constantly is what brings the joy of Christmas. Those who can't somehow manage to be around others without crying. Those whose hearts are too heavy to join in the merriment. For those of us who fall into any of these categories and the many others that may keep us from feeling on the inside, we wonder, is there a place for us in Advent? Is there a place for us in Christmas? It may seem like there isn't, at least according to the way that we see Christmas defined by the world. And we can all kind of describe what that is, can't we? It's a bustle of energy and excitement and shopping and people on TV and on commercials that have these incredibly bright smiles. There's so much energy and enthusiasm, and it just looks like it would be amazing if it also didn't look sort of exhausting. But that's the only thing in the world that we see, this is what Christmas means. And somehow, if we get the message of only one thing, then we begin to believe, well, that must be what it is. You know, our world is certainly one of categories, and we like assigning people who are in and people who are out. Christmas is no different, except that, of course, it is. Because Christmas is not about any of those things that I just said. Christmas is about God, and about God being born into the world. And with God, there is always more promise and possibility than we could ever imagine. There is always more than meets the eye. And the same is true with Joseph. Though he may seem relatively inconsequential to the story, he is vital. If he had abandoned Mary when she came to him and said, "I am pregnant," she would have been stoned to death in that time and culture. If he had decided that he wasn't going to do the act of fathering Jesus, then this child who was to grow up and talk about the divine parent that loves us so much, using the word father for his time and place, would not have known the actual love of the Father. And Jesus may have been divine, but he was also human. I can only imagine that he needed to experience that as a child. He needed that Father to love and raise him, for him to be able to speak about that in any kind of way, such that the world would listen. In the same way that there is room and necessity for Joseph in the story, there is room and necessity for us. Even if we don't feel like we can celebrate Christmas exactly as we should, right? Because celebrate probably has a fairly specific definition in each of our minds. It looks a certain way. But celebrate means more than one thing. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. Dictionary.com has a little thesaurus, and it'll take you right to some of these words. Celebrate also means to observe, to solemnize, to bless, to memorialize. There are many ways to celebrate Christmas. You know, rejoicing is wonderful and it is welcome, but it is only into places of emptiness that Jesus is born. I mean, think about where he was born. Was he born into a place of warmth and plenty and merriment? No, there was no room for him in the inn. He was born in a messy and cold stable because that is where there was room for him. If our hearts become too full of our own exuberance and self-satisfaction, then there's no place to long for that renewal of hope, which is exactly what Christmas is about, or to anticipate or appreciate a gift that we cannot give ourselves. And you know, emptiness can be a holy thing too if we hold it that way. Loneliness can be a welcome to God. Feeling a sense of lack can be an invitation for God to come in and fill the blank spaces in ways that we could not ourselves. And while some do worship with their laughter, we are just as invited to worship with our tears. Some worship by filling their worlds with light, but we are just as welcome to worship and wait in the dark, watching for that light, being attentive to that light to come into the world. Ultimately, Christmas is a matter of our hearts. And sometimes, I know, our hearts are too raw and weary and sore to offer up much energy or worship or to sit in joyful anticipation, much less to brave the crowds at the mall or even to go online. But God doesn't need much. God needs a little door into an empty and perhaps hurting and messy space. That is all God needs. You know, as I think about it, God didn't ask Joseph to be joyous or to go and explain to others how all of this was possible and how he was completely on board with what was happening. God just asked Joseph to show up. God asked Joseph to trust that somehow in the middle of this confusing and difficult time, that things were going to move towards the good, that ultimately love and light were going to win. In the same way, God does not ask for celebrations of merriment from us if we do not have any to give. God only asks for the one thing that we always have to give, the thing that Joseph had to give. What can we give him, poor as we are? As a solitary person standing in the midst of others, feeling unsure of our place, we can't give a lamb. We may not feel able to do our part this year or in years past, but we can give what we have. We can give what we can. We can give our heart, that aching, tired, unsure, still beating heart that we cradle so gently tonight. And as we cradle our hearts, we are cradled too. We are cradled in the light of God. For there is no standing on the outside with God. The star that held vigil over the manger did not shine only on a few, did not shine only on the ones that we remember in hymns and storybooks today. It shone on all of the world. It certainly shone on Joseph and on all those whom Joseph represents today. This beacon that reflected the radiance of the love born into our midst and guided the shepherds and the wise men, it continues to reflect on us today and calls each of us, even us, back to our place in the manger. Each of you, as you came in, should have picked up, hopefully were able to pick up a little bag. If you will take those bags now and look inside, you should find a wooden star. If you would take that star out and hold it in your hands. See what you have in your hands, a wooden star, unpolished and unpainted, simple. Feel what you have in your hands, noticing the 5 points that extend from a common center.
We feel this and remember that light shines in all directions from the common heart of God, upon those who rejoice and upon those who mourn, upon those who feel blessed and upon those who feel bereft, upon the mighty and upon the meek.
Notice what you have in your hands. A slightly rough piece of wood, similar to what a simple carpenter might have made.
We notice this in the name of Joseph, who was called and honored by God, though it must have been difficult for him to find his place in the season of Jesus' birth.
God, we hold these stars and hope for your light to shine anew in our lives. We ask for the grace to see the light that may already be shining around us, remembering that you often shine from the places we least expect to find you. And God, help us to remember that we too are light bearers, capable of offering light to the dark corners of the lives of others. Amen.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. Ooh, 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 ooh. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
We offer you now time and space for your own reflections and prayers and meditations. Nothing is asked or required of you in this time other than to breathe and be. For those who would like them, candles are available up here for you to light. You can light it in memory of a loved one, in simple recognition of your own presence here, or as a sign of a particular prayer that you have and offer to God. Also, there are several people here tonight who would like to be in prayer with you if it is something you would wish. Would those who are our prayer partners in the congregation please stand up? You can take a look around and notice that they are around. If there is someone that you would like to pray with, these people are available to you. In addition, 2 of our pastors are here and will be at the kneelers that are on either side. You're welcome to come up either as you light a candle and then on your way back to your seats, just to stop at one of the kneelers and pray with them. If kneeling is not comfortable for you, they certainly can sit in a pew with you as well. Or you are welcome just to be in your own meditations in your seats. We do ask that unless you are in quiet prayer with a prayer partner, that this be a time of silence so that everyone might have that opportunity to be in their own space for reflection. Let us be still now and seek the presence and companionship of God. us notice, as we look at this table, that much light can come out of our darkness. There are candles that are unlit, and we will hold those in remembrance of those prayers that perhaps our hearts don't yet know how to speak, or perhaps the prayers that are too painful to release. This table will remain, and if at some point you would like to light a candle, know that that is still an okay thing to do. But now, if you would join us in singing Silent Night. We are so glad that you chose to join us here tonight, and we hope that it has brought some small piece of peace and solace to you. There are a few other pieces of warmth we would like to offer you if you would like them. First, feel free to stay where you are seated for as long as you would like in prayer and reflection. Then, if you would like, come and join us back in the Redwood Room for a sip of warmth. We have some cider and cookies and a chance for a little bit of fellowship if it is something that would feel good to you tonight before you leave. And then, because we know that there can be a blessing of touch, we have people at each of the exits that would like to give you a simple hug as you leave, if it is something that you would like. We know that is not something that is comfortable for everyone, so if it is something you would like, just approach them with your arms out, and they would be very glad to do that. We also have anointers who will be standing just in front of them. Anointing is an ancient symbol in the Christian church of God's love and healing, And if you would like to receive this blessing, just approach one of those that are standing there by the doorways that have a small bottle of oil, and they would be very glad to offer you that gift tonight. Now go in peace, knowing that there is no height or depth, no light or darkness that can separate you from the love of God. Go knowing that there is a great presence stirring beside you that is ever your comfort, your advocate, and your peace in times of need.